of the External Partnerships Committee. And I'd especially like to welcome anybody who's new to the committee, and also Sue McGovern, who is our new, what would you call yourself? Assistant.
I don't know.
Taking over from Nick, who's still here, but not actually having to do any assisting. So, have we got any apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Louise Ashbury, Councillor Bob Rates is subbing, and from Councillor Emma Jane McGrath.
Thank you. And as we've got a few visitors tonight, would you like to give the fire instructions?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Chair. There'll be no fire drill tonight. The fire alarm is allowed continuous ring. If the fire alarm rings, please leave the building promptly and calmly using the stairs next to the lift if possible. The fire escape in the council chamber should only be used as a last resort. Do not stop to gather personal belongings and do not use the lift. The evacuation point is at street level in the Knoll Road multi-storey car park, and the assembly point is indicated by a green sign. Do not leave the assembly point until you're told it's safe to do so. And lastly, for those in attendance with limited mobility, in the case of evacuation, please let yourself be known to myself.
Thank you, Eddie. Also, to start the proceedings with my announcements, I'd like to welcome Kate and Greg from CASH, who are going to be talking about their work and what they've been doing this year, and also to Dr. Al Pinkerton, our MP, who will be able to quiz about what he's been getting up to. So, we've got three things really I want to announce. The first is about the Axon Sure Start workshop. Some of us attended on the 11th of April. You'll have seen the report included in the papers for this meeting. And I think on the whole, most of us who were there would think that the workshop was very productive. We talked about a lot of problems and sort of suggested ways they could be solved. Now, you'll notice that the committee is advised to resolve that. 1, the summary of the workshop should be noted. 2, it be recommended that Accent and SureServe work together, including discussions on any problematic contractual obligations to ease demand during specific pinch points in the calendar where operator capacity was reduced. Because at the meeting, we did see that one of the problems was around Christmas time, when sometimes they actually scheduled work, but then they didn't have the full number of staff. B, Sure staff continue their analysis to identify any patterns between problematic cases and its boiler stock. C, Accent works with SureServe to continue its recent positive resident engagement, including at in-person outreach events. I know there was talk of having one with St Michael's, which I'm not sure whether it's happened or not. I don't got anyone from St Michael's. And then the third thing was that Accent Housing, SureServe, and Ian Williams should be invited to our meeting on the 7th of October. Okay, so is everybody happy with that? Excellent. Now, we invited Dan Quinn from the Surrey Fire and Rescue Service to attend one of our meetings, but he declined, saying that scrutiny for this was provided by the Fire and Rescue Authority, Surrey County Council, and the Communities Environment and Highway Select Committee, as set out in the Surrey County Council consultation. So they have said they won't come to talk to us about the fire service. In December's meeting, you might remember that Ruth Hutchison asked some questions relating to patient involvement. And at that meeting, there's a representative from Surrey Heartlands who answered her questions. And we've received a follow-up communication from the Associate Director for Place, North East Hampshire, Farnham and Surrey Heath at Frimley Health Integrated Care Board in relation to Frimley Health's perspective on this. The committee would advise that the Surrey Heartlands position on patient involvement reflects the Frimley Health position. But in April 2026, when Surrey Heath will be covered by the new Surrey and Sussex ICB, this approach to patient involvement in Surrey Heath may change. So, during July 2026, the new ICB should be in a position to present to the committee. So we'll talk about that when we get to the committee work programme and possibly change our programme for that. So we're hoping that we'll have a presentation from the new integrated care system then, okay, and possibly what they'll do pre and post LGR. So I think those are all my announcements. What have we got next? We've got declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Cope?
Just that I am the council representative on the trustee board for Citizens Advice Surrey Heath.
Councillor Garrett?
I suppose I ought to declare that I am their quiz host for their forthcoming quiz on October the 4th, Saturday.
Thank you for that. Are you all happy with the minutes from the last meeting? Okay. So we've got no public questions. Is that right, Eddie?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so we can now invite Citizens Advice Surrey Heath to give us their presentation, and then we'll be able to ask you some questions.
Just getting this.
We do all appreciate what you do, and it's very interesting reading your PowerPoint and seeing all the figures and all the people you've helped.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us along today to tell you a bit more about the work. We were asked to answer some certain questions, which I hope we've done in this presentation, but obviously if you have any questions afterwards, do feel free to ask. How do I move it on?
Yeah.
It's not moving on.
Just press return.
Sorry.
One moment.
One moment, Kate. I've also got feedback going on.
Yep, so if you just hit that and don't hit the space bar. So it's
This
that one, yep.
Lovely. Sorry about that. So first of all, obviously, hopefully you all know who we are, but I think it's quite important to note that we have been the local advice provider for 65 years in Surrey Heath now. We're all about empowering individuals to solve their problems. We're dedicated to equality and for ensuring that everyone, no matter their background or situation, can easily get the advice they need. And we offer that advice on a very wide range of issues. So I felt that needed to be reiterated. So to start off with service performance and impact, I've been putting together our annual report for 24-25, and I've taken some of the slides from that. But as you can see, our client numbers are up by 9%, but issues are up by 13%, and client contacts are up by a third. This reflects the complex situations that clients come to us with and the number of times often we have to see clients to support them. Fortunately, with the financial support we get from some of our funded projects, we're able to employ specialist caseworkers who can dedicate the time and expertise to resolve these issues. This has also been reflected in the number of advice phone calls we've taken, because over the past year we've had some additional funded support for our advice line, and our face-to-face appointments have increased by about a third. More and more people are coming to our offices. So some of the highlights from 24-25, as I say, 9% more clients. And in our 24-25 client survey, 79% of clients found us easy to access, 89% found a way forward with their problem, and 88% would recommend our service to others. We have achieved over £4 million in income for our clients and over £336,000 in debts written off, and a further £205,000 in other financial income gains like loans rescheduled. We're working closer with health via social prescribing and our Macmillan Advisor project, where we've just taken on a second member of staff to support those with a diagnosis of cancer to access financial support and advice as quickly as possible. And we now have a Macmillan outreach. It's taken a little while, but at Frimley Park Hospital now that has opened, and one of our caseworkers is stationed there 1 day a week. And also we've assisted with the completion of 545 forms over that past year, the majority of which are disability forms, particularly beneficial as 50% of our clients have a disability or long-term health condition. In terms of the top client issues that we're seeing, these have remained fairly consistent over the past, I would say, 4 or 5 years, with benefits and tax credit being the number one issue. Charitable support and food banks have featured number 2, and I would say that's probably because of our administration of the Household Support Fund and people coming to us for that additional support over the past few years. In terms of issues within benefits and tax credits, as you will see, PIP, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is the number one issue, and that's not just for us locally, that applies nationally as well. Fuel debts have replaced council tax arrears as the number one debt issue, and this has led to us developing our energy outreach project to help address the need in this area. And although housing is the 5th highest in terms of issues, it's the 3rd highest in terms of number of clients that we see. Typical problems include access to affordable housing, which I'm sure we all understand, but in the area is a big problem. Housing repairs, furnishing properties with essentials when somebody has been given an empty place and no funds. We're also seeing people who've come into the country at Heathrow, such as the Chagosians, who've been housed by Hillingdon in local places in Surrey Heath and have been coming to us for assistance, which can be challenging, particularly those around who have immigration issues. I would say, though, it should be said that we have had less complaints about accent housing. Those have reduced over the past 6 months, I would say. So there seems to have been an improvement there. And I just thought I'd give a case study to illustrate some of the work that we do and how involved it can be. So this is a story about Edward. Obviously, his name has been changed, but he had a number of issues around debt and rent arrears. He was unable to work due to health issues and couldn't afford his living costs, and he had been given a court date for outright possession of his property. So our caseworkers activated breathing space to put his debts on hold, applied for a discretionary housing payment, a Frimley fuel allotment grant to clear his arrears, an exceptional hardship payment to clear council tax arrears. They also amended his direct debit mandate to ensure the bills came out the day after receiving his universal credit payment rather than before, so it helped to keep him in the credit, and helped with a UC50 to be considered as having limited capacity to work. That this involved a number of appointments over a number of weeks, but the result was that the possession order was stopped. He now has secure accommodation, he has more income, no arrears, and a balanced budget so he can support himself going forward. And I think that helps to illustrate as well that we are value for money. We continue to be, I believe, excellent value for money. For every pound invested in us, we produce £4.55 in fiscal value, £33.49 in public value, and £23.37 in value to the people we help. This financial value is credible. We know this because we use a set of calculations that has been developed by an organisation called the New Economy, and their model is approved by the economists in the Treasury, who are obviously experts in financial value. The figures in our model come from the latest evidence and data, and our financial value is conservative, so we only calculate financial value where we have credible evidence. Even when we do have that evidence, the calculations we make, especially the dead weight and the optimism bias, provide us with a conservative estimate. It's likely that our financial value is much higher. We also save money for others. So in the past, in 24-25, we saved over £425,000 to housing providers, nearly £183,000 to Surrey Heath itself, Borough Council, by preventing housing evictions and homelessness, £336,000 in savings to the NHS by reducing use of mental health and GP services, and nearly £1 million in savings to DWP by keeping people in work and economically active. We work well with others. We have a number of partnership projects around health and well-being, including, as I mentioned, cancer for the Macmillan Project and mental health support. Our social prescribing workers link people with local services, including local authority services such as community meals and transport. We're trusted referral partners for local food banks, for Frimley Fuel Allotment, Your Sanctuary and Camberley Job Centre. And we have good links with Surrey Crisis Fund, Adult Social Care, Home Start, Age Concern, and a number of other charities in the area. We're very much about keeping our finger on the pulse about what is happening locally so that we can help link clients in with that work. We also, as I've mentioned before, provide that crisis support with the support of yourselves through the Hardship Fund and a number of other charitable organisations, Frimley Fuel Allotments, Woking Lions, etc. We hold a number of small pots of funding that we can use to support people. Many times we have people coming to us when they feel they have nowhere else to go. And having access to these resources has been a lifesaver for many. But we appreciate that a small grant or award can often just be a sticking plaster. We always endeavour to engage people in further support to attempt to deal with the root cause of their crisis and to prevent this recurring. Our food bank figures have remained fairly stable over the past couple of years, but are up slightly on last year. We've also increasingly been taking advice out into the community. The focus we have mainly at the moment is on energy advice and cost of living support, but having people going out to different groups and different activities, we can link their clients and people who are attending there to our other projects and support, as well as third-party services. We've recently secured funding to provide a weekly drop-in service on the Old Inn with links to food banks and support. And this is part of targeting our services at those most in need and something we're looking to develop. As I say, the referral process is, our advice is designed to be as accessible and responsive as possible. There's a number of channels open to ensure people are connected to the right support at the right time. And our co-location with council departments and the job centre helps us to swiftly resolve matters before they can escalate and is helpful in ensuring people get the support they need in one place. And let's not forget in partnership our people, our volunteers and staff. They are so fundamental to what we do, and produce around £440,000 in value, with nearly 13,000 hours donated last year. Having local people supporting the community brings that additional value, as there's a real commitment to go above and beyond to help people in their area. It has been challenging to build our team over the past year. We have had some issues with training resources, and we're looking at how to address that, including the possibility of sharing resources with other Surrey Citizens Advice in order to get that training up and running. We do find that many people start the training and don't complete and commit, because we ask a lot of our volunteers. And once they're on board and committed, they are amazing. But it can be challenging to get people who have that time and commitment to dedicate to us. In terms of response to emerging needs, the trends we're seeing, so we are responsive and adaptable to emerging needs, and our projects are developed to address these. The current trends that we're seeing increasingly, a number of clients with mental health issues, and I think this has been the case for the last 2 or 3 years, people returning for help multiple times, and that has led us to develop our financial wellbeing and support project in partnership with Catalyst Support. They provide a wellbeing support caseworker, and we have a financial debt caseworker. And our aim through this project is to address the financial issues which can contribute to poor mental health, or be a result of this, with a mental health support to help clients engage and address their issues. People struggling with debt and their debts being higher has meant that more than half of the people we do help are in a negative budget and can't afford even the essentials in life. So we have specialist debt caseworkers who are also debt relief order intermediaries, and they do their best to find workable solutions. They negotiate with creditors and arrange realistic repayment plans to get debts written off, whilst helping clients better understand how to budget and manage their finance. We're seeing more complex immigration issues, and there is a lack of specialist support available in this area. Citizens Advice, our local office, is only licensed to provide basic immigration advice at level 1, but many of the situations we're seeing are more complex, and it is difficult to find that professional specialist support. In fact, specialist legal advice generally is becoming unaffordable to many and very hard to come by. And then there is PIP and the concerns on that. As I say, I will talk a little bit. I will give an example about that shortly. But basically, the funded projects that we provide are aimed at trying to tackle what we see in terms of the trends. And we anticipate this year that we will bring £370,000 into the borough, funding for specialist projects that we have developed. Client experience, since our survey in 24-25, we have had continued feedback on our service from our clients. So National Citizens Advice collect regular and independent feedback. And in our latest survey, 92% of clients said that they would recommend us, and 90% reported that we helped them find a way forward. So that's even up since the end of March. Obviously, I've given a few of the positive feedback messages that we get. That is not to say that we don't get complaints. Most of those have been informal. We've only had 2 legitimate complaints, formal complaints, I should say, against us in the past year, and both of those have been found to have no merit. So clients can complain directly to us or via National Citizens Advice, and we deal with all complaints promptly, and they're all investigated thoroughly. We also have in our meeting room a comments box that people can use to feedback about their experience. So on to PIP, as I said, I wanted to give an example of what the issue is around PIP. I'm sure you will all have heard it being discussed. Things have backtracked, the government has backtracked a little bit. That we recognise there is a need to reform welfare benefits, but to be clear, personal independence payment, or PIP, is not an out-of-work benefit, but more a means of keeping people in work and supporting them with the inherent additional costs of having disabilities. It cuts across all demographic groups. Since the pandemic, people are likely to have more money going out than in for both disabled and non-disabled. The reason that there is not more of a gap is because of the protective element of PIP. If PIP is taken away, people will go from an average surplus of £18 a month to minus £297 if they're on the standard rate, and from a £48 surplus to minus £423 if they're on an enhanced rate. This will have a significant cumulative effect over a year. And in addition, if people lose PIP, they're likely to lose the health element to standard rate universal credit, as this depends on receiving PIP and other passported benefits. So I wanted to give an example of the impact that the initial proposed changes to PIP would make and why our work is important. So I'm not going to run through every point here, but as you can see, Graham has multiple sclerosis, and this goes through some of the difficulties he has with life and the points that he would get for each of those conditions. So using adapted cutlery due to weakness in his wrists and hands, 2 points. He can only shower when someone's home and agrees to keep guard in case he falls, 2 points, etc. When Graham first applied for PIP, he was awarded no points, despite all these problems that he has dealing with everyday life. Citizens Advice supported him through a reconsideration, but the decision was still upheld. However, at a subsequent appeal, Graham was awarded 13 points, enough currently to qualify for the PIP daily living component at the enhanced rate. Having received that, he took on a part-time job and used his PIP to fund taxis to work and other necessary expenses, and anything left over was used for his utility bills. Graham receives the enhanced rate despite not scoring 4 points on any descriptor. And if Labour had brought in the change that they were planning, which was you had to score 4 points on at least one, he would lose his entire PIP award under the changes originally proposed, a loss of £5,600 a year. And as I say, that he would also likely lose money through his universal credit. So it's a significant change in income and financial situation. And how the change might affect us in the service, it's likely that any change such as these changes to PIP would involve an increase in demand for our advice and support. More emotionally distressed clients, of which we're already seeing many who are concerned about the talk of changes, longer appointments to try and address this, and more training resources to respond to the medically focused assessment process, which we don't know how that's going to change. And obviously, things have stepped back a little bit, and the situation is being reviewed again. We probably have more understanding on that, news on that. But I hope this illustrates why it is such a concern for people, and it is the number one concern in terms of our benefits. So finally, future outlook and recommendations. I'm going to hand over to Greg for this one.
Thanks, Kate. So we were expecting probably a question at some point later on in regards to how is Citizens Advice responding to the local government reorganisation that's obviously ongoing. I'm pleased to say that we've actually been in discussions around our sustainability for 18 months to 12 to 2 years across Surrey. So when the white paper came out at the end of last year, it wasn't a big shock. We were ready for that. what it did do is allow us to focus exactly what that needed to be. So it helped us in terms of what those solutions might be. So it would be a unitary-based model rather than a total Surrey-based model, for instance. So it just allowed us to structure that. So we are working together with all of the partners across Surrey. We have also been working with some of the other local systems of ice in North Hampshire and Berkshire, given the NHS model, but since that's now moved on, we can refocus primarily on Surrey. So much of the work with our strategy across Surrey is to align with the unitary model. So whether it be a 2 unitary or 3 unitary, we will be working towards a model of that structure, because clearly as both our local government and county government funding is a significant proportion of the monies we and many of the others receive, we need to make sure that we work closely with those in the coming years. So we are working towards putting in place I can call it West Surrey, because whatever the model, we will be West Surrey, local systems advice in place for the beginning of the next financial year, at least as a skeleton organisation to work on the integration and also work with both the unitary authority and other regional type funders, because we do see that there is a need for further funding and a wider model and less reliance on local government with all the challenges that are going on there. Whilst that is in place for the first year, we will retain all of the borough systems advice. They will be in place and focus primarily on local issues, local clients and local residents to ensure that while we look at that restructuring, there's no impact in terms of how we focus on our clients. With that in mind, we as part of our ask that we were asked to put forward is that we would certainly be very keen to seek your assurances for funding next year in line with our ring-fenced, acknowledging obviously the challenges that you have as a broader organisation. But we would be looking to put that in place for that first year so that we can focus on the following years. In the meantime, we will then obviously make sure that we are fully focused and beyond into any new structure that might be in place. One of the most important factors for all of the LCAs is that we want to retain local presence. In any model, it has to be very much local, and that's certainly something we'll be ensuring that that's in place in agreements. Beyond that, in terms of the ask, I think Kate just wanted to conclude on any other points.
We are going to be sending out a client survey to get some feedback from our clients in addition to the national one, and it would be very helpful if the council could support that on social media or share that, because what we want to try and get is not just people who already use our service, but perhaps people who don't and might do, and to find out a bit more about that. So any support with that would be very helpful. Probably in September now, I should think we want to send it out. I just want to say as well is that, you know, you're all going through your own changes, and it's going to be difficult for local people to understand what's happening. I'm sure you don't want them all turning up on your doorstep. So if we can keep our service going and keep that continuity and going through the changes so that people still have somewhere to go for help, I think that's really important. So to be able to have some reassurance about funding for a further year would be really, really beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that presentation. I think we've learned all sorts of things from that, and it's amazing all the work you do and the money you save us. And I found it very interesting hearing, especially the specific example about how the PIP scheme would have affected that man. So thank you very much for that. And have we any questions or any comments that we'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your excellent chairing skills. I've got quite a few questions. Do you want me to ask one and then work through others and come back to me? I think the thing that leaps out to me the most is the value for money that you deliver. It's jaw-dropping. And I think however much you focus on the pounds, shillings and pence, you cannot deny the value for money of the service you deliver in saving money for the council. I think that's absolutely undeniable there, and it speaks absolute volumes. So if you solely look at it from an accountant's perspective with no other consideration, it's an outstanding return on investment. And I think most people on the stock market would like that kind of return on the investment year on year. So congratulations, it's brilliant. You touched briefly on funding. I don't think we could really comment on your funding at this committee, although I understand where you're coming from. We have other pressures as well. We have petitions to cut car parking charges. So we have some really difficult challenges there to balance as to what's the priority, whether it's making car parking charges cheaper or whether it's making sure someone actually gets their PIP and isn't homeless. It's a real tough decision, I think, for some. It's a no-brainer for me. It's an absolute no-brainer for me. Looking forward to the unitary piece, you're obviously talking around mirroring a setup relative to West Surrey, or the West Side, as some people call it. How would that impact service delivery? Because one of the fears, and it's a big fear we have in local government, is by centralising and moving away from that local model, you suddenly start to lose touch with both your volunteers and with your clients. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think there is, as Greg said earlier, there is that commitment to a local service. I mean, our volunteers are very keen to support local people. We want to be, part of the survey that we're putting out is to ask how important it is for there to be a local presence. And it's how that is delivered, whether it would be an outreach or whether there needs to be a local office. Obviously, there is a lot unknown to us because we are in Heath Borough Council property and our lease is here, so it will depend a little bit, well, it will depend a lot on what happens with council property and how that is seen in terms of the local government reorganisation, whether there will still be some sort of presence in terms of local governance. So our commitment is there to make sure that we are still supporting local people. And the benefit of working together is that hopefully we will be able to provide more specialist services because they'll be across a wider area. So, housing specialists perhaps, or employment specialists, because we will be able to bid for larger projects, larger amounts of funding to spread across a wider area, but that will bring better services, I believe, to local people. The unknown is to how that local presence will be seen and how that will be delivered, because we don't know yet what's going to happen with the building. But we are committed to having something local, whether it be in the library, in a shop in the town centre or whatever. I think it is important still to have that local presence.
If I can just add to that, one of the benefits or the outcomes of COVID was that we had to move very rapidly to a much more hybrid type model. So pre-COVID, Citizens Advice was quite significantly customer facing primarily. It's now less than 50%. So we have either online through phone or online through computer, or obviously face-to-face, which is for certain clients, that is a necessity. So, as I mentioned before, points of presence is the key. The points of presence for telephone access might be few and far between, whereas having, as you say, outreach points either in local libraries or local community offices, or having an office that is manned will depend on that model. But I think it's absolutely, as I mentioned, the points of presence across the entire area is absolutely key, Rob.
And Councillor Garrett?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Greg. Good to see you. Firstly, thank you for everything you do. I know I regularly send people from my ward to you, and you are always there to help them. I echo your comments about accent. I've had a lot less issues myself in the last 6 months, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I've got a couple of questions, but I'll ask you a couple now, and I can come back later if there's more time. HS funding, HFS funding. I know it's been ongoing, then stopped and go. Is there still funding available? I know that, I think, if I'm right, the model changed a bit. Does it come from county, or is county filtering out what they want? That was my first question. So how's that going? Because I know you were helping with energy support a lot with that. I think my biggest question, and we were debating PIP in this chamber only last week, and I was telling stories about how I've completed the form on behalf of my son, so I know how difficult it is. And I'm really concerned that someone, because obviously it's not just physical, it's mental as well, which I think is the thing we really do need to consider as well. But a gentleman like this, he filled it out and got 0 points. And it was only because he was working with you guys, and it sounds like from what you were saying, it was the third go that meant he was doing it. And I think the biggest issue I have with this is it's a hard enough thing to fill out in the first place. Why is it needs to take 3 bites of the cherry for him to get the funding he needs? And then, okay, what will he still get funding afterwards, I think is another conversation. So I'd like to understand how it is that it took 3 bites of that cherry for him to actually get the funding that he obviously deserved.
That's a difficult one, because it could be that initially, often people, when they're answering the questions, because of, I don't know, pride or whatever, they want to reflect themselves at their best. You know, can you get dressed in the morning? Yes, I can get dressed in the morning. But what they don't say is it takes half an hour. They have to sit down. They need somebody to help put on their shoes, because people like to be seen as coping. So that's one issue. I think that's why I think it helps to have somebody helping them fill out the forms, because we're trying to explain to people it's not about the condition that you have or the name of your condition. It's about how does that affect your on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes it's difficult for people to grasp that, and they think, well, people should understand if I've got this condition, then life is very difficult. They don't spell it out. So that would be one thing. I don't know whether I can comment on, in terms of whether there is some sort of quota, I don't know. But we often see people who we feel should definitely be eligible. They get turned down, then they have to go through this mandatory reconsideration, which again they often get turned down, but then it gets reversed appeal. But that process can take almost a year, and almost a year when that person hasn't been getting the support they need. I'm not saying it's a deliberate thing, I don't know, but we do see an awful lot of cases being reversed at appeal that don't seem to be, you know, we felt that these people should definitely get it, and they don't initially. Often, I don't know who assesses those, and often those people aren't medically trained either. So it's a complicated issue, certainly, but people do need support.
I think your point is well made about the filling out the form. We had to fill out the form considering the worst day, not the best day. And basically there were tears when that form was being filled out. Now, my son is not disabled, and it's a case of simple questions like, can they wash themselves? Well, yes. But actually, it's the bit to get to that stage. Well, yes, but you have to tell them, blah, blah. There's actually a horrible form to fill out. You have to fill it out based on the worst day of that person's life, because otherwise, you don't get the funding. Now, I get that, so I can understand exactly what you're saying. So it does sort of explains why, but it really shouldn't be that difficult to get the money that this person obviously deserves. Thank you.
Councillor Hode.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to reiterate that again. As with Councillor Garrett, I too have gone through the PIP process. You mentioned earlier in your presentation that you are now partnering with Macmillan to provide people going through cancer treatment with guidance. I am one of those people. I've been treated at St Luke's down in Guildford, and the oncology nurse there suggested that I should, because I was not able to work as a result of my treatment, suggested that I should apply for PIP. So I did. She gave me some tips on how I should approach it to improve my chances. But I found exactly the same as you said, and you said that that whole approach of trying to take the worst day, the worst thing, it's really difficult. Yeah. And human nature is you don't want to admit that sometimes you can't do this. You go, well, I can generally do this. Net result was I did not get a PIP award. Now, I can live with that because my health has improved and I'm working, so I've moved on. But I would absolutely support that it is a really, really difficult form to fill in, and doubly difficult when you are already in a difficult place. Yeah. So anything you can do to push on that just accessibility would be really good.
I think it does help because we can say, look, you know, when they're asking this question, this is, you know, have you thought about this? We get people to look at, to make sure that they are reflecting their true condition. And that's where I think, as I said, filling it out with somebody else can help. But it's not a dignified experience, I understand. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so obviously we delivered the Household Support Fund for a number of years. We have not got a pool of funding to deliver in the form of supermarket vouchers like we have been. We have benefited from the Household Support Fund in terms of advice provision. Surrey County Council has provided some funding to citizens' advice across that. From my understanding, there is a pot that they're developing. They've given quite a lot to the Surrey Crisis Fund, which anyone in Surrey can apply to if they are in crisis. So there is that funding there. And I think they are developing, excuse me, a further scheme, which will probably come in, I would think, in the autumn, winter, to cover that. But in the meantime, we do have access to Fuel Bank Foundation vouchers and those other pots of funding, so we can still help people where necessary.
So, Canto, did you actually ask your question?
Thank you. I did actually have a question, but that I got sort of sidetracked onto the PIP issue. My question was regarding legal advice. I've referred a couple of bits of casework to Citizens Advice recently, issues on housing, tenancy agreements, etc., etc. And the response there was that anything to do with a new contract and its legality wasn't really something that you could deal with, and it needed legal advice. Now, legal advice doesn't come cheap, and when you're in that situation, you don't really have the budget. Is there anything we should be thinking of as councillors, or anything we can do as councillors to help residents and to help you to try and get legal advice in those more challenging cases?
It is a really challenging situation. We used to have, prior to COVID, we used to have a kind of rota of local solicitors who would provide a free sort of legal surgery, 15-minute, half-hour appointment, which we could refer clients to. Since COVID, we've really struggled to get that up and running. We've got one local solicitor who does provide that on family law, but it's around family law, and we're quite limited to that. You know, we do provide legal advice, but it's an advice and information about your rights and responsibilities. We are not legal specialists or, you know, legally trained to deal with, you know, specialist legal advice. So we will refer people on to local solicitors, but there is very little out there in terms of support. As I say, immigration, particularly difficult, and we're seeing a lot of people needing that specialist advice. But yeah, there's a big gap of legal support, unfortunately.
Encouraging solicitors to give back through pro bono work might be you may have more success than we have had. But, just saying.
Thank you. Councillor Hoff?
Thank you, Chair. I think all of my questions have already been asked, so I'll just reiterate the points that whenever I've had residents come to me with tricky situations, I've referred them, and the feedback that I've got when I followed up is, yeah, you've really helped. So I can see that sort of firsthand just in the short time that I've been here, of the good work that you've been doing. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was interested reading your case study, and you talked about the small pots of funding that you have to sometimes make direct payments to people, awards to people to help to cover some of their outstanding debts, etc. I'm interested to understand the sort of criteria that you use to make those kinds of decisions, because I imagine you have way more demand for these kinds of awards than the amount that you can actually allocate. So I wonder how you come to those decisions, who you make those awards to and who you don't.
So these are generally fairly small amounts of money, and we use them mainly for crisis support, or it might be something, might pay for transport for somebody to get somewhere for an appointment. We provide some phones, sometimes for people's SIM cards, etc. The fuel bank vouchers are only available for those on a prepayment meter where there is, less than a couple of pounds of credit on there. So we would ask to see a photo of their meter. If it's hardship, we will look at people's bank statements. There are some times when we get somebody turning up who appears in real crisis where, for one reason or another, we would rather give them a small amount of money to address that crisis, even if we can't check everything, rather than somebody suffer because they can't meet all the checks. But wherever possible, we will carry out checks around there, looking at their bank statements and their spending. But these are quite small pots, small amounts of money. This isn't paying off people's debts and things. This is more just a £25 for a supermarket voucher, So we do our best to assess that situation, but my feeling is we would rather somebody didn't go without than, who didn't deserve it, perhaps, rather than somebody go without who did. So, yeah.
Councillor Lee, do you want to ask another question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. 404 cases related to PIP. There are 2,958 PIP claimants in Surrey Heath at the moment, as we heard from the council meeting last week. That means 14% of current PIP claimants came to Citizens Advice.
Those are issues with it. So some people might have more than one issue with a PIP application.
But this says 404 clients with 1,097
Oh, sorry.
issues.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
So I was taking the client's figure.
Yeah.
14% of PIP claimants went to CAB. That is a huge number. That is scarily large. And I think it absolutely endorses the experience of Sean and Julie. And I call you Sean and Julie because you actually went through the process in person as yourselves. And, you've got access to a lot of knowledge and information as individuals. And I think that is a scary percentage. And I think we have our MP here this evening who I know is listening intently. And I would say to you, 14% doesn't sound right to me at that level. Obviously, with your wider influence within the House, I think it's perhaps an issue to ask more questions on. I'm sure it's something that I no doubt we'll hear from you later. You've asked detailed questions on already, but it is a scary stat, 14%.
Councillor Garrett?
Thank you. I was going to ask you a question about PIP later as well. So going back to the trends we are seeing, the first bullet point on that slide was increasing numbers of clients with mental health issues and these returning for help multiple times as they have exhausted other support options. What does that actually mean? Because it sounds like
It's people who they're not under the mental health care plan. They are perhaps not considered ill enough to be under that. They've been to adult social care or sometimes to the Hope Hub, sometimes other places, and they are difficult clients. We are seeing a lot of very difficult clients who can be sometimes quite aggressive, expect everything, everything to be sorted for them then and there, not happy if you don't tell them what they want to hear. And a lot of the time, those difficult clients are those with mental health issues. And it's an increasing problem that we're having to deal with, which can be quite challenging for our volunteers and sometimes quite scary when you've got somebody lying down in reception, kicking off and threatening to kill themselves or bomb the building, or and that's an extreme. But yeah, and some people come back on a regular basis because we're perhaps one of the people who will listen to them, and even if we can't help them, they can come and talk to us. But it is a lot of people. I mean, our mental health and finance project was always aimed at more lower level mental health issues, but some of the people are extremely unwell, increasingly. So that is a big challenge.
Hey, Councillor Cope.
Thanks. Hi. Just looking at your sort of operations, and obviously, as has been touched on, you're predominantly a volunteer organisation. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit more about who your volunteers are, where do you find them, how often are you having to recruit new volunteers to replace, what's the turnover like, and then also what the sort of general demographic of those people is, and how well it matches onto your client base, and whether that ever presents any issues at all.
Okay. Well, over the past year, we've probably had 54 volunteers through the door, some existing, some new starting. We had, I think it was 17 of those leave, either because they didn't complete the training or some existing volunteers who have left. 16, I think, were new people through the door. I would say that probably our best volunteers in terms of commitment are those who have retired. Some of those have retired early, but they bring a wealth of expertise and skills that can really benefit the organisation and local people. We do have a lot of young people who we have tried to bring in, but unfortunately they often don't stay very long, and our training takes, it's at least 10 weeks to just train as an initial gateway assessor, and then it really takes another 6 months to become confident in the role. So it's quite hard to get young people to make that commitment. We have had some luck with law students or graduates who we've managed to retain for a year or two. But it does tend to be older people who stick with us the longest. Yeah.
Councillor Hode.
Thank you. Following on from Councillor Cope's question then, obviously there's no financial remuneration for being a volunteer. Is there anything else that might incentivise someone to be a volunteer or stay as a volunteer? Are there any sort of qualifications, certifications, things they can say about a badge to wear or what have you that would help recruitment and retention?
Well, they do get a certificate when they've been through their training, completed their training. They do, particularly for young people, the skills that they learn. I mean, we had a young chap join us, this was 2 or 3 years ago, who, when he first joined us, wouldn't look you in the eye. He was in his early 20s, I think. He wouldn't look at you in the eye. He was very, very shy and struggled socially. And we put a lot of time and effort into him, and he got his confidence up on the phone. He really blossomed. And when he left, which he did to go on to find work, he sent us a letter which was just incredibly moving about how he'd had all sorts of problems in his private family life. He'd suffered a bereavement. When he came to us, he was like on the verge of a breakdown, and how much the training and support he'd got as a volunteer had built his confidence, and he felt ready to go back to university because he dropped out because of mental health issues, and it had really meant a huge amount to him, being able to give something back, being able to do something positive. The skills he'd learned, made a huge difference to him. And I think that is something. There's something about having the office there. Yes, people can volunteer, they can volunteer from home, but after COVID, people have come back into the office because there's that supportive environment. We have a really good team of people, staff and volunteers, who are very much sort of supportive of each other. And, it's a good place. So people get a lot out of it. And I think, it is a place where you get out more than you put in, really.
Thank you, I'd agree with that. With that example there, I'm just curious, how would an individual like that enter the pathway of training to become a volunteer? Because it sounds like personality and circumstance-wise, they would be the last possible person. How did that happen?
I think
can we find a way to feed perhaps a few more in like that?
I think it was because he dropped out, he was at home, he didn't have any, and he was encouraged to try something, volunteering, and I think he came to us. We were welcoming, we were quite patient, we didn't push him too much, tried to go at his own pace. We do try and adapt our training to accommodate people as much as possible. Some people are not very comfortable with using computers, and that can be an issue nowadays, or they're not comfortable on the telephone, and really a lot of the advice now is on the telephone. But we do try and develop those skills and provide that support for them. We do get a steady inquiries about volunteering. Where we've struggled recently is having the training resource. As I say, we're looking at trying to work with another citizens' advice to share their training resource, because we have people inquiring, but we need somebody who's going to take them through that training process. They can't just sort of come in and start. There's a lot to learn.
Councillor Kang?
Thank you. I'm here.
Takes the important one,
just to say, really good presentation. I have a relative, she's a solicitor who works for Citizen Advice Bureau. So I know what you go through. I'm also on the other side who sends people to yourselves from the financial side when the banks can't help. However, you put on there, on the 5 top benefit issues, other debt, and that's plus 78%. Could you elaborate on that, please? Because, you put energy, council tax, rent arrears, credit card, store card. What's the other debts?
Other debts could be a variety of things. You might owe your family or your friends something, or I think we have every issue that a client comes in with is coded. So I would have to see what ones aren't included in that off the top of my head, but it's things like family, friends, debts, maybe sort of that aren't issue, things like credit cards and fuel debts that you can't sort of classify.
Could there be loan sharks? Is that where they?
I've got a feeling I think we've got a classification for loan sharks within that, so I think that would show up. But obviously it's quite often difficult to identify that people have debts with loan sharks, because that might come under friends or family.
Just to follow on to that, would the scams and fraud and scams would cover that? Do you have fraud and scams? If they've been scammed and they can't get any support and they can't justify that it was a scam, so would they come to you?
Yes, we do have. We do give advice, particularly around scams, and we do educational sort of training people on scams as well. In terms of whether that comes under other, I would have to check our classifications to identify. But yes, we do quite a bit of campaigning around scams, and I've given a talk to U3A before about the different ways of making yourself safe online, etc.
Thank you.
Councillor Hoad?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I thought might be included, but isn't particularly of the top things is gambling. I'm assuming that gambling is a sizable problem. Do people that with gambling issues just not present at Citizens Advice for help?
They do, or it's very often it's their families that it's other members of the family who present with the problems because they have a partner who has been gambling. Again, we have gambling awareness at Citizens Advice. There are certain questions that we will ask to try and find out if gambling is the issue, and we do refer people to support around gambling because that can be a significant issue in terms of people's financial situation. We try and identify that, but it's not always easy. As I say, it's more often the families who are at the receiving end of the problems that will come in and address that. But we can refer people for specialist advice around gambling debt.
Right. We need to finish voting because you've got to go off, haven't you?
Yes, I apologise.
Have you got to go soonish?
If there's no more questions.
Yeah. And have you?
I would have liked to have stayed to listen to that, but
Have you got a quick question, Councillor Karen?
Yeah.
Yes, just a quick one, just the well-being of your volunteers and your staff, as the mental health is quite high. And if you get a customer, a person comes in with so much debt and everything, or so much issues, and they've just broken down in front of, how does your staff cope with that? Obviously, it's had quite a big impact on them as well, wouldn't it? Have you got a very good training sessions for the mental health side of it?
We have training sessions on mental health. We also have very good supervisors and one-to-one support, so people are encouraged to offload, if they've had a difficult case or challenging. We don't want people to take that home with them, and so they are encouraged to discuss that. We also have an obscene amount of cakes and biscuits and things to try and cheer people up with a bit of chocolate. We get a lot of that, but yeah, we do try and support through the supervision and one-to-one sessions. We do have training around mental health, suicide awareness, etc. But yes, it's difficult when you're supporting people who are in trouble. So we are very aware of mental health of our own staff and volunteers.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for letting me ask that.
Well, I think we'd like to thank you very much, both of you, for coming.
Thank you.
It has been fascinating, all sorts of insights we've had into, and the work you do, it's truly amazing, and all your volunteers. So we would like to thank you very much, and get in touch about the thing you wanted to have advertised by us.
Yeah.
Pass that on to the...
What I say, you can come to me if you like, or to Eddie. Right.
Okay.
Lovely. Thank you. And apologise for running off.
No, well, thank you. So now we welcome Al as our MP to talk to us about what you've been up to and what you're planning to do.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to come back and see you. A lot has happened in the months since I was here last August, but if I may just start, seeing as we've just heard from Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, and just to pay tribute to the amazing work that they do and the amazing work that Kate's team do on our collective behalf. My team of caseworkers are in daily correspondence with Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, passing cases back and forth, trying to unlock sometimes interminable issues for people, and they are the most remarkable group of volunteers, and we've heard some of the amazing achievements that they have achieved on our collective behalf today, and I know that my team really benefit from their sage advice. So, as I say, a lot has happened in the last number of months. I think I last saw you, I think I noted down, on the 3rd of August 2025, so I was very fresh into the role at that point, just under a month after being elected. And I think it'd be fair to say my feet have hardly touched the ground in that time. So much had to be done in terms of initial setting up. And actually, I thought one of the interesting things that Kate said was how long it takes to train up caseworkers and to allow caseworkers to become confident in that role. And given that MPs' offices are very largely dedicated to local casework, it has also taken a long time to recruit, to find really top quality people, to train them up in some of the skills and the sensitivity that's required, and then for them also to become confident. But a year in, I'm pleased to say that we are now up and running and have a full sails, and we're sailing really well. But a little bit more about that perhaps as we go. There's a lot to get used to when you enter the House of Commons for the first time. The rules, the processes, the protocols, the parliamentary procedure, the formalities. And the Speaker of the House of Commons is always very quick to point out when you make a mistake. Kindly at first, but then with increasing force as time goes on. Sometimes it's a little cough. Sometimes it's a raised eyebrow, sometimes it's a dragging over the coals, and probably quite rightly too. But that all takes time to get used to. But it's also been a fascinating experience, just learning the physical geography of the place, learning the different ways that you can work on behalf of your constituents has also been really fascinating. The art of the written question to government ministers and departments, the oral question, making interventions at the right time, the art of spotting an urgent question or urgent statement that might just be announced on a really important issue of the day, but also the more set-piece debates as well, both in the House of Commons and in Westminster Hall, which is another fantastic place where really important debates about more local issues can take place. I'd be delighted to answer any questions about some of those things that I've been learning over the past year as we go on. As I say, we've set up a constituency office with a terrific team of caseworkers, but also people who help me in Parliament. I can't remember if we had even started looking for an office when I was last here, but we found an excellent place in Bagshot, and we have a terrific team of 4 caseworkers who are working every single day on major issues that local people face, along very similar lines thematically to the ones that we heard from Kate before, and I'll say a little bit about those cases in just a second, but just a few numbers for you. So in parliamentary terms, I have asked this year on behalf of constituents in Surrey Heath 307 written questions. I've made 76 speeches. I voted 166 times. In Bagshot, in the constituency office, we've opened 4,500 cases. We have managed to close successfully just over 4,000 of those, so there's still the best part of 450 active cases ongoing that we're still working with constituents on. We've sent 8,000 emails on behalf of constituents as well to different bodies, organisations, agencies. We heard about Accent mentioned before. They are recipients of quite a few of those emails, as are Surrey County Council, Surrey Heath Borough Council, and others. But I think this has very much been a time defined by partnership and working together. And again, I think it's a theme that we heard from Kate before. Trying to work as well as we possibly can with Surrey County Council, with SHBC, through Nick's good offices, behind very often with Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, Age Concern, and others, and attempting to achieve what we need to achieve for constituents by working in partnership wherever possible. There's been a few notable achievements that I would just like to share. Achievements and also big local issues over the past year. Almost as soon as I got elected, one of the big apparent local certainties became much less certain than it had been, and that was the redevelopment and the rebuilding of Frimley Park Hospital. It was announced by the new Labour government that the funding for that looked rather less certain than perhaps had been previously suggested, and the schedule for that also looked increasingly shaky. And so by asking questions in the House of Commons and by working very closely with Labour MPs behind the scenes, for example, Alex Baker in Aldershot, and by trying to lobby wherever I could, West Streeting, I played at least some part in helping to ensure that Frimley Park has in fact been given its budget for rebuilding, although of course the time scale for that announcement of when and where that's going to take place is still very much to be announced. We've been working on the issue of sewage in our rivers, and I've been really proud to work with my Lib Dem team in Parliament to try and keep that very much in the spotlight. My amazing Lib Dem colleague, the MP for Witney in Oxfordshire, Charlie Maynard, has done more than anybody else to hold Thames Water to legal and political account. And I think the response that we've had in the report on the future of the water industry today, I think takes into account some of his incredible insights and achievements. One of the things that I'm most proud about is something that emerged from a piece of casework and a chance meeting with a constituent late last year. Kathy Foley is a local resident. She may be known to some in this room. And her son Hudson Foley died when he was travelling in Ecuador a number of years ago, and he died because of carbon monoxide poisoning in the homestay in the accommodation that he was staying in. And Kathy came to me to ask whether we could possibly seek to try and change the Foreign Office travel advice to warn travellers about the risks of carbon monoxide to particularly sole travellers, but not only. And this is a perfect example of how you can escalate through the various stages and layers of Parliament. We asked written questions, we asked oral questions of the Foreign Secretary. We secured a Westminster Hall debate that compelled a Foreign Office Minister to come and hear the testimony, and it was great that Kathy and her family were there. And wonderfully, we achieved complete cross-party support for this proposition, and the Foreign Office have indeed changed their travel advice. They have now officially noted carbon monoxide as a risk that travellers should be aware of. And the reason that that's significant is because so much of the UK travel industry indexes their risk assessment to the advice and guidance on the Foreign Office website. So it's had a cascading effect through the UK travel industry. And what's even more satisfying was that WH Smith, who of course are a very prominent retailer in airports and elsewhere, were watching that debate. And as of August this year, will be selling Hudson Foley branded carbon monoxide alarms in every single one of their airport outlets, as I say, from August. And that's all thanks to Kathy coming to see me during a constituency surgery, and then the parliamentary system being able to do what, frankly, it should be able to do, which is to achieve fairly swift and effective change. So that's been a real highlight of the first year. Other things that have happened, again, because of local constituency casework related to a building not terribly far away from here at North Court, we have exposed a second but previously hidden phase of the cladding scandal because of the work of particular fire safety engineers who were signing off falsely documents declaring buildings to be safe when in fact they were unsafe. So that's been an extraordinary thing, again, based in casework that has come and has been brought to me in constituency surgeries. The single biggest issue that we have on our email inbox is the issue of special educational needs. It is by far and away, head and shoulders, the single biggest issue. And I have been, together with my Lib Dem colleagues, but not just my Lib Dem colleagues, MPs across Surrey, we've been really drilling into the scandal, frankly, of special educational needs in Surrey. Incredibly, we have parents of children with special educational needs, we may even have some in this room this evening, who have had to fight in the most adversarial way to ensure that their children are given the packages of support that they need. And when you start to drill into the attitude in Surrey County Council, I have experienced, frankly, the most extraordinary words coming back to me. Senior representatives of Surrey County Council have said there is not a problem with special educational needs in Surrey. The problem has been that we have parents who are too articulate, by which that person suggested that parents are too demanding in Surrey for their children's wants, rather than supplying and servicing children's needs. We have a county council who have at times seemingly covered up or hidden evidence of wrongdoing from their own scrutiny committees. We have a county council who reclassified complaints as inquiries in order to massage figures. So this has been a major issue. And I've met with dozens of parents, and I'll share with you one story on one particularly harrowing afternoon at the Old Dean Family Centre. I met about 70 5 parents of children with special educational needs, almost every one of whom had to give up their employment in order to become full-time permanent carers for their children with special educational needs, because the county council were either unable or unwilling to offer the packages of support that those children needed to return to school, or were unable to find appropriate school places for them. Sometimes both parents in a family had to give up their employment. And at what economic cost, at what damage to themselves, to their families, to society as a whole. These are the kind of stories that get delivered into my email inbox every single week, and these are the kind of cases that my amazing team of caseworkers are dealing with on an everyday basis. They're doing amazing things, and they also require, my caseworkers also require the kind of support that Greg and Kate were talking about, because sometimes the cases are utterly harrowing. So those are some of the highlights of things that have come up over the last year. And clearly we also have big issues to come. We have unitarisation still to come, big question marks over local government debt and where that's going to flow. And I have been asking relentlessly, endlessly questions of the local government ministerial team about what's happening to that debt and where that debt will flow, and will it ultimately be dealt with in particular kind of relief mechanisms. And the truth is that nobody yet knows. Hints have been dropped, but we just don't know how that's going to go yet. I'm really concerned about unitarisation. Whichever model of unitary authority flows out of this process, because there's a real risk that the most vulnerable in our society will potentially fall through the cracks. And I think we heard that Greg and Kate are very attentive to that issue as well. I'm particularly worried about that in relation to special educational needs. Children who are already made vulnerable by a very poor system could be made even more vulnerable by a period of poorly handled transition. And I've seen no evidence yet to suggest that transition is going to be effectively handled, given that apparently smooth running is hardly smooth. We also have issues with ICBs and the major changes that are going to be happening there, which again just adds more uncertainty and more potential anxiety. There are various longer term projects that I'm working on as well, and I've tried to lay the groundwork for some of the things that I know local people want to see and to see made better. We talked last time about the local railway system being slower now, the trains from Camberley being slower to Waterloo now, when the trains are running at all. And if anyone tried to get to Waterloo today, they really would have struggled. But the trains on average are slower now than they were a century ago. So I've been having meetings with the Rail Minister, Lord Hendy, with Network Rail, with South West Trains, to try and find any possible mechanism to try and improve the service from our main train stations here in Surrey Heath. The message is it is not easy. A lot of the money that's being invested in the railways is being invested elsewhere, on the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, for example, and of course HS2. But that's not to say that things can't be done. And what I hope, I haven't seen any evidence of it yet, but what I hope is that with greater coordination between track and train service, that there might be greater efficiencies and faster train services that may be possible. Other possibilities, such as train stations in Deep Cut, for example, or reconnecting the Sturt Cord, have hundreds of millions of price tags placed against them. That's not to say that they couldn't ever be done, but there would need to be a very demonstrable economic case built for those things. But the truth is, unless you start building those cases, they will never happen. And so, at least over the last year, I've been learning about how you can build that case and gather the evidence required to make some of those things possible. A few other little highlights for you, perhaps. Surrey Heath has been mentioned by me in Parliament 300 times over the last year, which I'm very proud about. We've put Surrey Heath very much on the parliamentary map. People are very aware that Surrey Heath is a place on the move and has high demands, and it's no bad thing to be thought of as a demanding place. So hopefully some of those demands will begin to pay off as we move through this parliamentary term. But what I'd like to do perhaps is just to draw those remarks to a close and open up for questions. But also to say I'm not sure whether I'm permitted to use props in this particular chamber. You're not in the House of Commons, but one thing that will be coming through doors, every door in Surrey Heath over the next few days, is an annual report back from me to every single constituent, talking about some of the things that we have attempted to achieve together over the last year with some of those key stats and contact details, and to try and encourage people again to keep in touch and to keep bringing their casework to my amazing casework team. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that. You seem to have been busy this year. Questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Al, for coming in to give that update. I'm going to ask you the question that you probably do not wish to be asked. I'm a light water councillor. One of the biggest challenges in my ward for many years is the junction of the M3 and the A322. Your predecessor worked on it. It's been handed to you. Do you have anything you can tell us on updates or what levers you might be able to pull, or any updates at all, really? Sorry, that's really not a great one, but thank you.
No, thank you for that question. I in fact did have several meetings over the past 2 to 3 months with the Roads Minister and with, I always get the name wrong now, is it Highways England or National Highways? It's recently been rebranded from one to the other, or vice versa. I think what surprised me about those meetings was that junction does not exist as a problem on any register. And that really surprised me, given the number of problems that have been reported there over the years and the political advocacy that has been done. It just does not feature on any strategic register of things that need to be done. And so the first task is to make sure that it is firmly planted on that register for highways and for local strategic roads. And so I have absolutely impressed upon both Highways England and the kind of the regional transport directorate that it needs to be on there, because it is the bane of so many communities' lives. And it's not just Lightwater, as you know. It's Windlesham, it's Chobham. It has a cascading and knock-on effect because people seek to avoid that junction and therefore drive through multiple villages. So I've made that point very, very clearly and linked that to other developments such as Mindenhurst, which of course has just brought more traffic. Although Mindenhurst is a little bit further away, there aren't that many junctions off the M3. So if you want to connect onto our motorway system, which is one of the reasons why people do live in this area, then those junctions need to be working more effectively. I will share with you one thing, that when I had the meeting with Highways England and the regional roads team, they said that the ideal solution would be to separate out the local traffic from the motorway traffic entirely, and therefore the ideal would be to build a flyover of the A322 over the motorway. And I don't know whether this is just coincidence, but exactly the same figure was put on this project as had been put against the Sturt Cord reinstatement on the Basingstoke railway line. £1 billion was, I was told, would be the cost of that particular project. Now, what I have learned very quickly in Parliament is that when people say something will cost £1 billion, what they're really saying is that it will never happen. And so what we need to try and find are other solutions that can be brought into a reasonable cost envelope that can deliver at least some of the benefits that might be achieved from the exquisite. Because I think too often people have looked to exquisite bespoke solutions which cannot be delivered by the costs or the budget that's attached to it. And what we need to do is to try and find something that makes the situation significantly better for significantly less money than that.
Councillor Garrett, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming this evening. I've just got a few things, and it won't surprise you in the slightest that they all relate to SEN. I And I thank you, because we've met a number of times and we've had a number of conversations, and I've met with one of your caseworkers as well. So EHCPs, ongoing issue. I know that your inbox is full of it. And I've heard rumours that there's talk that they might be, the government have decided they may do something with the system, which means that they'll have a new system. And I think the biggest concern I have is the fact that the new system may be run alongside the old system. What happens to those in the old system? And I think the biggest issue with SEN, taking county aside, because I know that's a political hot potato, is it's not just Surrey County, it's a nationwide thing. And I don't believe throwing money at it is the solution to the problem. I think looking at the whole system and reviewing the system and how it works is probably, because we haven't got an unlimited amount of money, we haven't got that money tree. So I'd be really interested to hear what, from your side, the plans are, because I know we can say what we like about county, and we all have our own views on county, but it's not just Surrey County Council. So I'd really like to get an understanding of that. I'd like to thank you for your team for the letter I sent to you forwarded on to the Minister of Schools about the Dyslexia Initiative, which was the TV programme that was on a few months ago. I'm a bit concerned about, having been through the system on dyslexia, the system on that is unfortunately broken as well. And PIP funding, I'll be really interested to see. I mean, I know in this council only last week we came up with a letter that we want to be written to everyone and his wife to try and look at PIP funding. But again, I know we decided to suggest to halt it, but I don't think halting it, I think reviewing that system as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of reviewing there, but it all relates to, I'm pretty much, I suppose, one subject as far as SEN goes.
Well, thank you. And can I just, on behalf of my caseworker team and myself, thank you for the support that you've shown to them, because you've helped them navigate an incredibly complex system, and you've done so generously with your time. And I know how much they appreciate that. And those conversations are now enabling my caseworker team to do far better for other residents as well. So genuinely, it's really appreciated. So you have heard the same as I have heard, and frankly, the way that you've expressed your question to me, you could have been listening to my contribution, my front bench appearance in front of the Education Minister the other day, or the Minister for Special Educational Needs, Catherine McKinnell, because I put exactly the same points to her. I challenged her with the same issues. And that is, we have also heard that there could be a dilution, a diminution of the EHCP system. And for parents who have fought so long and hard for that EHCP, that legal promise that this is what your child needs, to remove or to weaken or threaten to remove or to weaken the EHCP, is incredibly distressing, because that is the result of months and years of battling. And so my key point to her was, even if you are going to change the system, because the system definitely does need to be changed, don't change the system. Don't dilute, don't remove the EHCPs until you've got the system up and running. Because parents, for many parents, that is the one thing that they've got. That's the one assurance. That's that one statement. Even though, frankly, in Surrey, and please don't think I'm making a party political issue here, but when you hear the stories that I hear, and I know you hear them as well, of EHCPs coming back with the wrong name of the wrong child, describing the wrong conditions and offering inappropriate packages of support, you're not making a party political point. You're just saying that this system is broken. And do you know what? It doesn't need to be. Because there are plenty of other counties who don't necessarily do brilliantly, but they do far better than is happening here. There are major problems in Surrey that, frankly, need to be tackled. And unless people put their hands up and say, you're right, the system doesn't work, it's broken, we've got things wrong, we fouled up in the past and it's having implications now, then we'll just keep in this endless doom loop. And one of the problems that we have in particular in Surrey is the fact that there are so few specialist schools. And yet there are children who require specialist places. And so we're in this incredible position where Surrey are now having to procure private school places from hedge fund-backed private schools, and I have several constituents I know who are at schools who are at £150,000 a year, where the vast majority of that fee is disappearing out of Surrey, out of the United Kingdom, and is lining the pockets of people in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, because that's where the hedge funds are based who are funding those schools. Now, that cannot be right. And you're right, it's not all about money. It's not about more money in the system, but it's about making the money in the system accountable and making sure that money works right now. Because the average cost of educating a child with special educational needs in the United Kingdom is £61,000. That the fees can be £150,000 is frankly obscene and should not be allowed. And so first of all, one of the things that I think should happen is that those fees should be capped. Nobody should be allowed to charge fees that high or for those profits to be so excessive. So there are things that can be done. And the other thing I would say is that, and this is where I have sympathy with county councils, they are bearing a huge burden here, a financial burden. And they're having to pay for adult social care, and they're having to pay for potholed roads, and they're having to balance that off against the needs of children with special educational needs. And sometimes those needs are truly profound. And I think one of the things that could be done is to create a kind of national institute for special educational needs for some of, particularly the most complex cases. It should never be that a council has to effectively balance off the needs of children with SEN against the need to repair a potholed road. It'd be far better to take the most challenging cases out of local government funding altogether. So there are things that absolutely have to be done, but we shouldn't also absolve the problems with Surrey by saying this is just a national issue. I'm totally with you on the dyslexia campaign. You probably saw, you might even have seen in the background of that Jamie Oliver documentary, because I've been very much supporting his dyslexia campaign, because it cannot be right that children with dyslexia find themselves disproportionately sent to prison at the point of adulthood because they've been so profoundly failed by an education system. There is something deeply wrong right now. And on the subject of PIP, I mean, I can't really answer any more detailed questions because I don't even think the Labour government know at the moment what's happening with PIP. All we know is that we had an extraordinary day in Parliament where a bill disintegrated in front of our eyes and PIP was hoiked out. Other promises were out of the bill. Other promises were made subject to review, but we just don't know what those reviews are going to say yet. But I think what's so regrettable, and I think Greg and Kate probably see this in their inboxes too, is the incredible anxiety that this has created. The sheer unknowingness of the future for people with PIP. And I speak with personal family experience of this as well, because my mother-in-law has got primary progressive multiple sclerosis. And the case that we saw on the screen before reminded me very much of the way that she was judged and graded and potentially degraded by the process of offering points for her mobility and her ability to handle cutlery or shower herself. But you know that's the nature of the system that we have. And I'm very glad that the government got the message and realised that they fiddled with this at their peril, because what PIP is meant to be doing is it's meant to be getting people into work. And it does do that. And there's almost no recorded evidence of fraud in the PIP system either. In fact, exactly the opposite. Most of the evidence shows that people are kind of under-rewarded or their disability is under-accounted for. So I'm really glad that they thought again on that. But we wait and see what comes back in the future. Thank you very much for your question.
Councillor Cope?
Thank you, and thank you for coming to the committee and taking our questions. Always good to see some blue leaflets going out in Surrey Heath, so I look forward to receiving that through my door. It's from this angle.
No, it's definitely parliamentary green.
Okay. Sorry, I thought that was going to be quite a good line, but clearly not. I want to turn back to sort of the public transport piece. And particularly the trains. It's something that comes up very frequently in St Paul's, understandably. It's something that I pressed your predecessor on quite frequently. It sounded to me like you were still long-term hopeful, but the last public report concluded that there was no viable solution that provided a direct connection into the South West Main Line from Camberley to Waterloo, even in the longer term, without significant levels of development in the area. Is that still the message you are getting from Labour ministers? And if I could sort of sneak in a second but connected question, how seriously are you taken when you take these problems to Labour ministers? Because I think there's sometimes a perception that Labour aren't really interested in Surrey because it's not a significant area for them politically.
I certainly hear that if we would want, and I think we do, significantly better rail connections from Surrey Heath, then that can only come if you demonstrate a very powerful business case for it. And that business case, frankly, is either about a kind of large industrial investment or commercial or, frankly, many, many more houses. Now, we already know that we're going to be asked to take many, many more houses. The question is, are those houses going to be in a location that of high enough concentration to then warrant something like an improved rail connection? If the draft local plan from many years ago were to happen, for example, and there was to be flattered developments of greater intensity and density in Camberley Town Centre, then maybe there is a case to be made for faster services from somewhere like Camberley. But equally, I'm then told that's a very difficult thing to do because we have a one-track line, you've got a stopping service, it's difficult to have trains that overtake one another, and you're already on a very congested line. Sometimes there's just not the land available to reconnect back onto the Basingstoke main line. One of the things I spoke to government ministers about fairly recently was an effective reinstatement of the old deep cut railway line, thinking about the Mindenhurst development. And that came in comparatively cheaply at a couple of £100 million. But then there's not enough housing there to warrant it yet. And then there's a decision that local planning authorities would have to make. What would be the critical mass? What would have to be demonstrated to the rail authorities to warrant, to justify a new station? And that really goes then beyond my brief, because I don't have the guiding hand of where development's going to go. But certainly, transport ministers say, if you want that, then there has to be a kind of critical mass of development in a fairly local area to warrant it. The train providers, however, are more hopeful, not necessarily of kind of mega gains, but some of the new trains that are being brought online are much quicker. They stop faster, the doors open quicker, the doors close quicker, and they scoot off on their journey quicker. And in the David Brailsford theory of marginal gains, there's definitely a possibility over a fairly long rail journey, and our rail journey here is well over an hour, that you could knock off a good 10 minutes for a direct train journey between Camberley and London over the longer term. Now, that's not transformatory. It's a minor gain, but what I've also asked the rail authorities to do is to really think about the demand that exists here already. So one of the problems that we face is that it's actually very difficult to demonstrate the demand for train services from a station like Camberley. And that's because everybody has learned that you don't take the train to London from Camberley. So everybody drives to other places. They drive to Sunningdale or Brookwood or Farnborough. And so I have a commitment from the new nationalised rail service to use mobile phone data, which apparently they can do, to trace the starting point, the geographical starting point of somebody's journey onto the railway system. So they can see where somebody resides overnight, where they get onto the train network. And that's going to build a far better map for them to be able to make judgments about the nature of our transport system, because they don't want people having to get in their cars in order to access the train system. That doesn't fit with a sustainable transport policy and agenda. The results of that could take a year to come. Hopefully, maybe in a year's time, if you invite me back after tonight's performance, then maybe I'll have more data to share with you. But it's about building the case. It's about building the economic case, building the commuter pattern cases to try and evidence why we need better transport for here, because at the moment they're frankly not convinced, or they can't see the evidence for why somewhere like Surrey Heath needs it.
My second question about you being taken seriously by Labour ministers.
I have no doubt that I'm taken exceptionally seriously by Labour ministers.
Right, thank you for that. Councillor Lee, a question?
I have 4, Chair.
Well, you're not allowed to ask all of them at once, because others might want to ask.
Oh, that's
You
very
can
kind.
prioritise 2.
Prioritise 2. So I'm going to start with a selfish one, which is my ward of Surrey Heath, and I'm going to talk about Upper Chobham Road. I'm sure you're familiar with Upper Chobham Road. There's a crossing there called Ravenscote Crossing, which I believe in the past you were one of the campaigners to get that crossing installed. And it was hugely popular when it went in, although when it went in, literally a week or 2 later, it was dug up because it had the wrong asphalt. I've been lobbying since before it went in to get the road resurfaced around it. And I think it's fair to say that the road until Thursday consisted of potholes and the odd little bit of road that you tried to keep your wheels on rather than falling off. A bit like the memes online you see, where the officer says, I'd like to talk to you about the safety of your car, and you just see potholes. So on Friday, some machines planed it, and planed 2 parts of it, either side. The speed humps were planed off as well. And on Friday, they also resurfaced part of it. That's the bit, I guess, that's further up the hill. The bit down the hill didn't get resurfaced. On Monday, the road was closed again. The residents I spoke to were unaware it had been closed. So one poor resident in particular missed their meeting because they couldn't get to their meeting because they hadn't left their car outside their driveway. So that was somewhat of an inconvenience. And then it transpired that someone perhaps got their maths wrong. So they ended up with not enough tarmac. They brought 8 tonnes of tarmac to site, but needed an extra 5 tonnes that they had to ring through it and get. They then ran out of time with the road closure order to be able to put the white lines down. This is all 2.5 years after we started campaigning to get that stretch of road resurfaced, and they've missed a bit as well, which is already breaking up with all the cracks that you normally expect to get water on and to be lifted with ice. Surrey County Council flatly refused to come to this committee, unlike your good self, and even your predecessor, Michael Gove, who made a commitment to come to this committee, but unfortunately a general election got in the way of his attendance. Is there any chance that you could perhaps take up the case of Chobham Road again, like you did with the crossing? Because Surrey County Council are a shambles on send. They're also shambles on potholes. This is really simple stuff, to order enough asphalt to cover off what you've dug up. I mean, how difficult is it? And to work out that if you're closing the road for a longer period than you've originally told residents, they do actually need to know. This is an absolute shambles. I know it's relatively small in the grand scheme of critical things we've heard, but this is something that's been going on for 2.5 years. How difficult is it to sort out the road outside of a school on a reasonably steep hill? We need a good quality road there. That's where children are crossing. It's a no-brainer.
Thank you for your question. I'm very familiar with where you're talking about. I helped to campaign for that crossing to go in, and I saw the road deteriorate while my kids were still at Ravenscote. Be fair to say that if special educational needs is the top issue in my email inbox, then roads and potholes is probably number 2 or number 3. It's a massive local issue. I've got a very good relationship with Matt Furness, who is the portfolio holder for roads. He at least responds to my letters to him at Surrey, so that I consider that to be an achievement. And I can absolutely draw his attention to particular places, although he is at pains to point out that roads are regularly surveyed and that there is a kind of central register and prioritisation that is done of roads and their state of repair. I have to confess, until you mentioned this now, I wasn't actually aware that road was being resurfaced and that this work has kind of only got partially through. But if you would like me to, if you can furnish me with more details, I'm happy to write to Surrey County Council on your behalf. Although I should also point out that I have fundamentally no statutory oversight over Surrey County Council, and at times they have said that they will not respond to particular emails that come from MPs, and they've said that on the issue of special educational needs. Matt Furness, at least for now, is taking a different approach and is responding to emails and is acknowledging where things need to be done. So I'm very happy to take that forward.
Thank you. The piece that's breaking up is just a few feet from where they drew the line for resurfacing, and it's a gap between the resurfacing and the actual crossing. It's lunacy. Yeah, it is such a small piece. It makes no logical sense. I'll move on to my second question. This statement, I think, left Councillor Cope pretty much falling over at full council the other day when I made it, just as the mayor was walking out. So I was at a council briefing on LGR last week, and a lady gave a comment from the audience and said, I'm all for abolishing Surrey County Council and moving everything down to the boroughs. And I said, here, I agree with that. The lady was Katia Malkus Cooper, which I think shocks some because we don't always agree, but I wholeheartedly, Katia, agree with you on that. It's a very sound idea, although whether it will ever see the light of day is another issue. But that moves on to something slightly more important, and I think it's something that we across the chamber have raised around LGR, which is the volume of stranded debt. That debt that even if you flog all the assets off, ain't going to be paid down. And this is one of the real big, I think, fears that's starting to come out from residents as they start to talk about this, which is, in particular, what's going to happen. Woking debt's on everyone's lips, Spelthorne's debt's on people's lips, Surrey Heath's debt's on people's lips. Now, obviously, you talked earlier about having access, obviously at a more senior level than we enjoy here, although probably a similar level perhaps to the Conservative leader of Surrey County Council, whose baby this plan has been over many years with the 10 million or so pounds of investment that's gone onto it. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I want to hear about what you can do to advocate for us dealing with this debt problem, because it is scary. It really is scary.
Well, what I can say is that from the moment Jim McMahon discussed the possibility of local government reform and unitarisation and the way that it would influence the future of Surrey, the very first question that I asked as I was bobbing after his statement was about the issue of debt. Because that was the major issue that was unresolved at the point of announcement, and frankly, I think it still is unresolved now. There have been a few words, placatory words about we will deal with something related to Woking, but there has been no discussion about mechanism or methodology or approach to that, or ultimately the extent to which that is going to clear or otherwise Woking's debt. And as you rightly point out, it's not just Woking. Woking has about 2 billion in debt, Spelthorne has 1, Runnymede 650 million. We know that Surrey Heath teeters around about 200 million, and Surrey County Council has in the region of about, I think, 2 billion, of which the Western Unitary Authority would inherit 1, and possibly it's actually more than that. But my calculation is that a Western Unitary Authority in a two-way split would inherit on day one about 5 billion of debt, and would therefore be bankrupt, effectively bankrupt on day one of coming into existence. You just cannot trade your way out of that position. So something has to be done, but we don't know what it is. So if people, as you say, are anxious about it, and I believe they are, and they probably should be, then I can't offer an answer to it yet, because the government seem to have almost put their head in the sand and have not yet addressed the huge elephant, the huge financial elephant that stalks over Surrey. One of the things that I feel very profoundly is that debt, and this goes beyond what the government does with the situation that we're now in, but all of that debt was accumulated with remarkably little oversight. And I think with unitarisation coming, one of the things that I really want to impress upon the government is the need for incredibly robust reforms to the way that, for example, debt can get accumulated. So Section 151 officers have got incredible power, I mean, huge power. If you were designing a system that had checks and balances and limits to power, you wouldn't design the system that we've currently got. Because Section 151 officers were able to borrow vast sums of money from the Public Works Loan Board by effectively just signing it off. And it was down to them, and they were able to say, I believe that this money can be repaid, and therefore I give the go-ahead for this money to be borrowed. It wasn't like a mortgage lender where your kind of lending or your borrowing power was tested against some independent mechanism. It was literally down to the say-so of a 151 officer. Now, that's scary. That's a scary reality from the past. But if you make local government even bigger, with the possibility of even bigger borrowing, then the temptation may be to try and borrow your way out of the current financial situation that we are in. But that could end up just compounding the situation that we're in for the residents of West Surrey. So what I want assurances of is that that debt is handled by the government, and I think a serious part of that debt should be taken onto the government's books, but also that situation can never recur, and that we have far better mechanisms to prevent the vast and inappropriate borrowing that we saw in the past.
Just tiny follow-up on that specific point. Obviously, sort of Tim Oliver, Conservative leader of Surrey County Council, wrote to the minister, asking for us to be on the fast track and for our elections to be cancelled, which is very controversial. Have you seen any evidence that he has tabled a plan for the debt from your level within Parliament? Have you seen a plan from Tim Oliver of any kind?
No, I haven't seen any plan for how debt can be handled.
Thank you.
No, any other questions?
I've got two more.
Can you make them quick?
Yes. I've been allowed to ask my next two questions, but I've been told to make them quick. So, looking at the M3A322 junction, we note that Surrey County Council seem to have put some new traffic lights in on the A30, which has mysteriously solved the problem. Are traffic lights a potential solution on the A322 M3 junction?
So I'm not quite sure. So the reference to the A30 and traffic lights as a solution. Sorry, just help me out with that one.
So they put some new traffic lights in on the A30, and it significantly improved the traffic flow along there. The question was, are traffic lights something that are a cheaper option around the M3A322 junction? Because not all of the traffic flowing on and off is signalised.
I don't quite know where the traffic lights in the A30 are that have improved things, because from my personal experience as somebody who uses that road almost every day, the junction at Waitrose is particularly problematic, and that strikes me as being the source of so much of the local traffic, and I haven't seen any improvement there. But I'm very happy to hear evidence to the contrary. But sorry, Councillor Garrett is going to come in, and I want to hear what he has to say on that, because I'd be genuinely interested. But in terms of traffic lights at the M3A322, then I think a lot of local residents who have direct experience of that junction have often said that the phasing of those traffic lights does no favours to people who are driving north on the A322. And in fact, I've heard stories of people leaping out of their car, sending their children out to go and press the button to go and to activate the crossing, the zebra crossing, in order to allow cars to be moved out. So there is the potential, I think, undoubtedly, for different phasing on those traffic lights to improve traffic flow. But of course, everything has knock-on consequences. And from what I understand, one of the reasons that they haven't done that is because there are genuine concerns about traffic then backing up down the M3 slip road and back onto the motorway, which could then cause safety concerns. So it may relieve pressure in one direction, but it could then cause problems elsewhere. I think it could potentially improve the situation, but I think you need to look for probably a more substantial engineering solution as well. But I'd be happy to hear from Councillor Garrett about the traffic lights.
So it's an interesting one, this, because I actually brought it up at full council. I actually asked that the leader sends a complimentary letter to county, which they don't get very often. So I'm a regular traveller through, because I work in Ascot, or near Ascot, and for years I've complained in this chamber about exactly that junction after the BP garage, and actually spoke to two county councillors and got an explanation as to why it didn't work and why supposedly now it does work. And as someone that does use it daily, it does work now. Apparently, the lights at Waitrose, which they changed, I think, probably 18 months ago, weren't communicating with the lights that were by just after the BP garage. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they changed the board within the lights, which now communicates with the lights at Waitrose. And I can honestly say that since they've done that, I'm going to touch wood, I have had no problems. So supposedly the lights weren't communicating with each other. That is what I have been told, and that's what it looks like now.
Well, I am delighted to hear that personally, because I have sat in queues of traffic through Bagshot, chugging out fumes, and it felt incredibly frustrating, because it just felt that there was such a simple possible solution. So I will take your word for it. You're an honest man, and I'm going to go and sit deliberately in traffic at a busy time of day in order to experience that myself. But that's so often the way, isn't it? It's so often actually a comparatively simple solution, or something that just hasn't quite worked as planned, that then causes kind of years of pain. And it's not just pain to drivers, it's pain for people who live in Bagshot, who can't get out of their roads and their driveways, and who have to suffer that congestion and traffic fumes. So if that genuinely is a solution that has come about, I will also join you in writing to Surrey County Council congratulating them for the move that they have made there. But that's really great to know. Thank you.
My final question is on kinship care, which is a subject I didn't know very much about. I listened to I think it's Stuart Black, who is I think one of Jacques' predecessors in this chamber, on a couple of occasions, and learnt a little bit about it. And then I attended a meeting at a school, and I learned a little bit more about it, which was a little bit scary. When a child is placed into local authority care, and you may have to help me here, Sean, because this is probably an area you understand a little bit more than I, there's various pupil premiums that come with a child because they're in local authority care. But if that child is in kinship care, they don't get that pupil premium, and the local authorities generally tend to fight as hard as they can not to give it, which is a real frustration, and something that I found quite shocking when I met with I think it's King's International on the particular subject. Is that something that, if you haven't already done, you could add to your list of SEN things? Because these are children who haven't gone into care, they're being cared by a relative. So it's one step away from care. It's where the parent or parents are unable to look after them. And the relatives have done the most amazing thing of stepping in as a family member to be able to provide that individual better support. And it's something that's quite scary that support's not there. I mean, Sean's looking slightly confused. I may have got my lingo slightly wrong.
So, obviously, you know I'm a school governor. I know pupil premium gets applied to those below a certain there's pupil premium, but then children whose parents are in the armed forces get a level of pupil premium, and children I know from experience, because I've got friends that have got adopted children, also get pupil premium. But I wasn't aware that children that are of kinship don't. So that is a surprise to me.
And that is true, and that is entirely wrong. And I'd also like to pay tribute to Stuart Black, who invited me and the other political candidates in the 2024 general election to a really important session that he's actually run prior to both of the general elections that I've sat in, to meet local kinship carers, family members who have taken on a child within their family. One of the things that I shared at one of those meetings was that I am only here because, as a result of kinship care. My father was, his mother died, his father couldn't cope, and he was then brought up by his older brother and his wife, and they were only 10 years older than my father was. They took on my dad and his brother, which was an extraordinary thing to do, and they brought him up proper. And I'm a product very much of that, and I'm incredibly grateful to them. But you're absolutely right, kinship carers are not treated on the same basis as, for example, parents who adopt. And it's entirely wrong, and I have been to several really useful drop-in sessions with kinship care organisations where we are given resources to advocate on their behalf, and I've asked several questions about this in Parliament already. And I think the government perhaps have some future announcement to make on it. I think they've shown an interest and an openness to the argument that's made. I don't think we've yet had clarity about what the move that they're going to make is. But on this issue, I think the government are listening. I think the question is to what extent and what ultimately may change after they do whatever they do. But it's certainly on their radar, and I and others have put it on there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, well, thank you all for all your questions. And we have definitely, I think, learned a lot. We've covered a lot of topics, and it's been really good to hear about how you're keeping Surrey Heath in the limelight and fighting for all the various things that we are all concerned about, whether it's the M3 junction, whether it's Send, all those things. We feel that you are taking our cases to the Parliament. So thank you ever so much for that. And thank you for coming tonight. And we look forward to getting your leaflet through our doors.
Well, thank you very much. And genuinely, if you wish to have me back, I'd be delighted to come back. I think it's so important and such a useful opportunity to share what I've done, but also to gather, frankly, other ideas that I can then take forward to Parliament and try and advocate for the issues that are brought to you by your residents and constituents, and that I can then pass on. I think that's exactly the kind of spirit that I would love to be able to proceed in.
Yep, I think that's what we would like to do too. Thank you.
So members, earlier on you heard the chair mention about the forthcoming Surrey and Sussex ICB, and given the fact it will come into being on the 1st of April, we're suggesting that it will be July 2026, which would be more appropriate to hear that item, most probably from the relevant director at the new ICB. And as mentioned, there was that focus on patient involvement, which the public speaker in December has suggested that we take forward before. The other thing is, you'll notice that in January 26, the work programme is currently empty, and there is a list of suggested items at the bottom of the work programme, and would be happy to take any views on what should be prioritised.
The things written there are South East Water, because Thames Water won't come, housing associations with a focus on potential future provision, revenue grant holders, and then there were two other smaller items people had suggested, which was Surrey Wildlife Trust and RBL Camberley branch. And we're always open to any other suggestions people have. Councillor Lee?
I'm sure I noticed that the police were kind enough to attend from the borough, but the fire brigade declined. I was slightly confused by that. I understand their note, but I was still slightly confused that the police were always very happy to come, because we're always very nice to the police.
There is a simple answer to that. There's legislation saying they should come to the Borough Council's meeting at least once a year.
Ah.
Yeah.
We could have a go with South East Water. It's probably about the right time of year before a hosepipe ban comes in.
It's interesting we're inviting South West because Thames won't.
Thing of it.
Sorry. On the water companies front, we're looking at companies who provide sewerage and sort of drains, so clearing the dirty water. Would we also consider looking at companies that provide municipal water, drinking water, which I think generally in this area is Affinity, but I'm not sure it's exclusively in.
No, in this area, it's happening in Camberley, around South East Water.
Okay, my clean water comes from Affinity Water.
Yeah,
multiple.
Yeah, there are several providers.
Okay, but I guess my
Yeah.
question is, are we looking purely at the providers who handle things like sewage, because we've got issues with sewage spills, or are we looking at providers of clean drinking water because there's issues with pipework infrastructure leaks, etc.? Because they're generally two different companies across Surrey Heath.
Yep, they are different, and Thames is the one that gets rid of our waste and sewage, but for some of us it's South East, presumably it's Affinity. And so we're thinking about, leaks in the road, or those sort of things, and the state of our pipes, as you said, that sort of thing. Okay.
Thanks. I can't remember if there's rules around whether we can invite our contractors to this, but possibly Glendale as our green spaces contractor, would they be someone we could invite?
Have to think about that, I think, is the answer to that. Lee?
There's lots of talk about, obviously, unitarisation. In May 2026, the West Side will be formed. I'm calling it the West Side because we don't know exactly what it's going to be called yet. Prior to that, there's obviously going to be an Amebus organisation that's trying to set it up. One would assume that as an external partnership, they're going to be an external partner, albeit for about 14 or 15 months. That would be an ideal opportunity for us, for that organisation that's setting up the West Side, to come before us, because to have elections for councillors and all that infrastructure, it's got to exist. So that work's obviously ongoing now. So should they be coming before us at this point as part of that external partnership piece? It's pretty crucial because they're going to be taking over us. Sorry, Eddie. So prior to the new unitary coming into being, presumably first week of May 2026, you have to set that infrastructure up. It doesn't magically appear. So there's going to be a body and organisation creating it. So presumably that coming before as an external partnership would be an external partnership.
Yeah. So you're talking about the shadow authority, aren't you, basically?
Whatever's setting up the shadow authority.
I think the chief executive might have some further information on this, but I know there's going to be a number of joint committees and alike, I believe.
Very kind of the Democratic Services Officer to volunteer me to answer a question, isn't it? Yeah, from the naughty seat. Eddie's entirely right. There will be a joint committee that will be set up, but set up for a very short duration because of the speed at which we'll be moving into unitary status. It is possible that we could ask a representative of the joint committee to attend an external partnership select committee if you wish, Chair. I don't know who we'd ask just yet, so clearly that would have to be a watching brief and something that sits on the forward plan as a TBC.
If that. We can think about that, can't we? Yeah. Any other suggestions? Right, anything else we need to do, Eddie? No? Well, thank you all very much for attending, especially our guests, for answering our questions so well. See you all in about 3 months' time. Well, see you before then, but at this particular meeting. Thank you.